name of this week's Parsha is Mishpatim, which means judgment. Okay, so the underlying premise of this Parsha begins by telling us the same way the laws that you associate with Torah at Sinai. Know God. Don't let anything stand in your way. That's from Him. All of what we're going to have in this week's Parsha, which is what we would call civil law, money, damages, all of the things having to do with concrete realities are just as much as His word. So when you ask about like the difference between Judaism and Christianity, one of the things that stands out is they both have the ideal of love your neighbor, but Judaism is going to say, how do you show this love? It has to be concrete, it has to be real, it has to do with how you treat anyone in society, it has to do with money, it has to do with real life. Okay, so I'm going to do my best to see that we touch all of the halachot in the parsha, but I doubt if we'll be able to do it. So I'm giving you this warning to begin with. It's very full. It begins with something that will seem archaic to you. In ancient Israel, slavery was permitted, but not by the definitions that we would use when discussing other cultures in which slavery exists. Is there still slavery in the world today, by the way?
Yes.
Absolutely. Where? Where do you think there's slavery?
Like Southeast Asia, Eastern Europe.
What?
Like people who are making shoes for 5 cents an hour?
That's not slavery. They could walk away from it. A slavery that may not be economically viable, but they could conceivably walk away. Okay, you have it to some degree in Southeast Asia. You have it openly, publicly in Saudi Arabia and in various places in Africa. I just want you to realize this. What's slavery? So slavery is when you can't walk off the job. It's not about how difficult the job is, it's about the fact that you can't quit. So slavery in ancient Jewish society worked as follows. A person could sell themselves as a slave for a maximum of 6 years. Why would anyone do this? So there are two reasons. One would be extreme poverty, and the other would be, and this will give you a huge insight into everything else in the Parsha and about justice by Judaic definitions. Secular law, the laws of theft are perpetrator-oriented. If you stole something, you deserve to be punished. In halacha, in Jewish law, they're victim-oriented. If someone stole from you, you need compensation. We don't believe we could punish people. Justice in that sense belongs to God, but the victim should be compensated. So if somebody steals, they have to compensate the victim. If someone stole $100, they have to pay back $200. Okay, clear? Suppose they can't, then they could be sold into slavery, and the money will be used to give the victim what's his. Okay, clear? Women cannot be slaves according to Jewish law. The possibility of abuse is too great. Okay, very young girls, up till puberty, could be sold into slavery by a parent if they don't have food to give them. But they have to be released at puberty, okay, or at 12, whichever comes first, because again, a woman cannot be under the authority of anybody else. Okay, clear? Only herself or her parents. Okay, so what were the terms of slavery? The slave had to be treated like a household member. If everyone has 2 pillows, the slave has to have 2 pillows. There were no slave quarters. But what makes the person a slave is their time doesn't belong to them. This is a huge statement. One of the blessings that are in the traditional prayer book is thanking God for not being a slave because your most precious possession is your time. Okay, clear? Okay. The master is allowed to marry the young girl slave. Marriage means that there's consent on both sides, obviously. Or have her get engaged to his son. Okay? And it's there that the Torah reveals what the marriage contract is. In other words, in the most vulnerable possible situation, it says you have to treat this woman like you treat any wife, and here's how you treat a wife. So the idea is that you could see from the way the most vulnerable people in society are treated, how society idealizes treating people in the broader sense. So how does a man have to treat his wife? What does he owe her? So there are three things which have many offshoots. The first thing is that he has to support her food, clothing, and shelter. To what degree? With whose money? And what are her options if he doesn't? So the basic contract is in accordance to what she expects given her present life situation. That's the minimum. And the maximum is in accordance to his income. In other words, if she's used to living very simply, he can't have her live less than that. But if he earns a lot of money, she could demand more than that. He could better her situation but not worsen it. And the laws there are very specific. If she was living in the city, for instance, which most people prefer, he can't make her move to the country. Okay, clear? There has to be honesty in the contract, meaning if he claims to be rich and it turns out he's poor, then the contract isn't binding. If he has hidden illnesses, the contract isn't binding. If she's withholding hidden illnesses from him, the contract isn't binding. Okay, in addition to food, clothing, shelter, he has to be there for her physically. The assumption in Jewish law is that women have physical desires just as men do. And that he can't, like right after the marriage, somebody say, let's just keep it platonic. You know, like, I'll earn, you'll cook. No, okay. He has to be there, okay? She could release him from that responsibility, but that's up to her. If, for instance, he wants to travel for business for half a year, she could say, okay. But otherwise, he has to be there, okay? Okay, next. There are a whole slew of other obligations that come along with it. Her medical expenses, her burial expenses, redeeming her from captivity if needed. Okay, what are some other things? Support of her children if she came into the marriage with children and that was stipulated. What are some other things? Basically, that's it. Okay? Any questions on what he has to do for her?
I do, actually.
Yeah.
So you said he can't give her a worse living situation.
Right.
But if she comes from a lot of money and...
So she has to agree, then she would have to agree before the marriage to accept him as he is.
Okay.
But he can't just drop it on her. In other words,
Got it.
okay, clear? Okay, no other questions? Okay. Now, if it's contractual, that means there are two sides. What's her side? I thought it was just to take. Okay, no. Okay. No. So his side could be summed up with the word provide. Her role is basically to take what he provides and to turn it into something. So the way this is stated in Hebrew is he is mevi, he brings, v'hi mitakenet, and she rectifies what he brings. So to clarify this, the Talmud said, a man can bring flour, but you can, grain, but you can't eat grain. A man could bring flax, that's linen seed, but you can't wear flax. What does the woman do? She'll turn the grain into food, the flax into a garment, stand him on his feet, bring light to his eye. Okay, got this? Okay. So she has to turn it into something. Okay. She also has to be available to him physically, just as he has to be available to her, which is to be self-understood. A woman working. There are two forms of contract that a woman's work could have. One is if he is the one who's supporting her, but she works additionally, like he's a lawyer who makes $250,000 a year, but she gives ballet lessons twice a week, let's say. Okay, it's not to her interest to say 50-50. Is that true? Okay.
Wait, it's not in her interest to do...
If he earns $250,000 a year and she gives ballet lessons twice a week, is it to her interest to say 50-50? No. Okay, clear? So if she's saying, you are supporting me, then her money is also part of that same package. She can't say, what's yours is mine and what's mine is mine. This doesn't work. Okay, clear? However, she does have the option of saying, you don't have to support me, and I want to hold on to my own money. So that deal is usually not advantageous to the woman if it's a young marriage and she expects to be having children and wants to be a stay-home mom. It is advantageous to a woman in a second marriage oftentimes when they're both earning. Okay, clear? So she could go into either arrangement. Okay, this is clear? Okay. Any questions about marriage as a contractual thing? Okay, no. So let's go back to what the Torah is really saying. What the Torah is really saying is that the woman is a person. So when you compare this to the way society views women, the idea of women having rights, the way a woman having the ability to bring a husband to court for non-support, this was all very, 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 very revolutionary until the modern era. You realize this. Okay, clear? Okay. Further, so after the discussion of how do you treat a slave, it goes into a discussion of all sorts of damages that a person may do to another person, how they have to compensate them. So the premise is that things happen in life. In life, things happen. And you have to pick up the pieces. You have to pick up the pieces. Okay, so we're going to start with external damages, and then we're going to go into other sorts of damages. Okay, the first thing, if you harm somebody physically, it can either be on purpose, or by accident, or through negligence. There are three possible ways to which harm could come. Again, on purpose, through negligence, okay, or unavoidably. If something is unavoidable, then the perpetrator does not have to pay the victim because it's not his fault. What's an example of something unavoidable? You're standing by the window, okay? Like that. I rush in. I knock you out of the window accidentally. You fall on her and kill her. She can't sue your heirs, or if you survive it, you, okay, or her heirs sue you, more correctly since you killed her, because you had no choice here. Okay, clear? So there are all sorts of situations in which the person has no choice. So concerning that, it says, Rachamana Patre, that Hashem, who's merciful, exempts this person. You're only liable when you have a choice. Next would be doing something on purpose. So if you do something that injures another person on purpose, and there are witnesses, there are 5 kinds of damages you have to pay. The first is medical bills. The second would be days out of work. The third would be permanent inability to work. The next would be a court-assigned sum for the pain, and another court-assigned sum for any embarrassment. For instance, if a person ends up with scars. So these 5 kinds of damages are paid to the victim. The perpetrator isn't imprisoned, because again, we don't believe we could really change people or punish them. But they do have to pay for the harm that they've done. This is clear? Okay.
Can you repeat that?
Yes. Okay, so one is for pain, and the court decides what that would be. And the other is for embarrassment or shame. Okay, clear? Okay, so now we're going to have different cases that are somewhere not inadvertent, but not purposeful either. And what happens then? Some of them will be capital cases, some of them will be physical damages. 2 people are fighting. Should they be fighting? No, but they are fighting. They're having a fist fight. One person punches the other person hard, the other person goes flying. They go into a third person, okay? Okay, let's say a pregnant woman and now she miscarries. Okay, what's the level of accountability? So I want to give you a rule in halacha. Even if it's not your fault, as long as you're aware and it's not totally outside your choice, you have to pay for anything your body does. If your body did it, you have to pay. Okay, clear? But they would only have to pay a fine, not all 5 kinds of damages, because again, it was very inadvertent in this point. So this case carries over to this. What if you were trying to kill person A and you ended up killing person B? Okay, 2 examples. You're in the Ford Theater. What took place in the Ford Theater? Do any of you remember? That's right, that's where Abe Lincoln was assassinated. So there it is. You see John Wilkes Booth coming over to the place in the theater where Abe is sitting with who? His wife. And he's holding a gun, and in those days, this is how they held guns, with 2 hands, right? Okay, he's holding the gun and aiming it. So you try to get him. You have your Uzi machine gun with you. Oh no, you forgot to take lessons. Oh dear, you knew before you buy the gun you're supposed to take lessons. So you aim it, but no, you kill 3 other people, okay? Because have such things happened? Yes. So are you considered a murderer? What do you think?
Yeah.
So there's something less than murder, but more than accident. And this is where this fits. Okay, clear? It's not a pure accident. You made choices. You were negligent and irresponsible, but it wasn't a purposeful murder. So this in-between stage is dealt with differently. Depending very much on the circumstances, each case will be judged differently. Sometimes, where the person was really intended, as in the example I gave you, to prevent bloodshed from happening. Meaning, if this person was a sharpshooter, would he have been right in killing John Wilkes Booth? Would he have been right or not? Yes. So then he would be exempt. In other cases, his negligence would be viewed as the overriding situation, and he would be sent to one of 48 special cities of refuge. He wouldn't be allowed to continue his life as usual. There were 48 cities that were Levite cities. Not all of them were cities of refuge, actually, only some of them. And he would have to live there, which means he would have to abandon his home. His family could come with him if they want. They don't have to. And he lives in a sort of exile until such time as the Kohen Gadol dies, and then he could re-begin his life. Okay, clear? Okay, so this sort of situation sometimes comes up contemporarily, where, for instance, you'll have somebody who sees a terrorist and tries to kill the terrorist, and the terrorist moves, and they end up killing somebody else. You understand this? So this is considered not even negligence. It's less than negligence. You can see where this is so? Okay. Okay, but it's viewed as tragic. There's also a rule that bad things often happen through people who need a lesson, who've done something wrong. So a person who, even if their intentions were completely good, ended up in this situation would have a lot of soul searching to do. Okay, clear? Okay, next. Okay. You're asleep at night and you hear noises. Okay, you try to get your husband up, but he won't get it. Okay, whatever. So they seem to be coming from the basement. Okay, so what's the stupidest thing for you to do now? Go downstairs to the basement. Will a lot of people do this?
Yeah.
Right. What should you do? Call the police. Like, don't go down to the basement. What do you think you're going to find there? Okay, so you find a robber in your basement. He has welding equipment. He's disengaging your safe from the wall and pulling it out. Okay, clear? What should you do now if he sees you? You have to kill him. Why? If you were seen, what's going to happen next? He's going to kill you. Why will he kill you? Because people assume that people are going to fight for their possessions. So robbers come armed. Okay, this is clear? If he didn't see you, what should you do? Get out of the basement. Get help. Okay, whatever. So you're supposed to kill him because this is the source of the famous law, which you're familiar with. If someone comes to kill you, you should rise and kill them. Again, if someone comes to kill you, You should rise and kill them. And the question would be, why should you do that? Why do we say your blood is redder than their blood? Why should you defend yourself against them? You're going to have bloodshed here. There will be bloodshed. The question is, will it be an innocent person's blood or somebody who made a choice to live a life of violence? Will it be their blood? Okay, clear? So the innocent person always takes precedence over the guilty person. Here are exceptions. If when you look down, right, you open the basement door, who's there? Mommy. What's she doing in your basement? Who knows, okay? Okay, your mother-in-law checking to see whether you cleaned it recently, whatever, okay, clear? So if you kill her, you're considered a murderer. Why are you considered a murderer? Mommy's not going to kill you. Worse will say, there really shouldn't be all those cobwebs. You know, I was just looking here. I figured, you know, you should be careful. Okay, she's not going to kill you. Okay, so you can't kill her. If it's clear as day that this person is no murderer, you're considered a murderer if you could kill them. Suppose you happen to be a sharpshooter, as I'm sure that most of you girls in Gesher are sharpshooters. Okay, or like those, I forgot the name of this family, the Walendas, the famous circus family. And there's this, the Walendas are the tightrope. There's one of the circus families who like, they throw knives and like they could like get like between a person, you know, like that sort of thing. You could throw a knife perfectly, or you're a sharpshooter. Do you think you should kill the person? No, because you will not be killed if you only injure them. Your purpose in killing them isn't punishment. It's to keep yourself from being killed. Okay, clear? In Christian theology, they would say if someone slaps you, instead of slapping them back, you should turn the other cheek. Like, okay, almost dare them to slap you because that'll appeal to their conscience and they won't do it if they see that you're no threat. The assumption is when they think you're no threat that they won't do anything. So the reason we don't is because we don't think it's good for you to be slapped once, certainly not twice. And we don't think it's good to enable somebody to be violent. It's not good for them. It's not good for anyone to be violent. So you have to physically prevent this sort of behavior. This is clear. We don't believe in turn the other cheek. Okay. This is clear to you? Okay. Next. Okay. Next is not murder, but situational realities that can occur involving property. Okay? So we're going to divide all property into three groupings. Your place, a public place, somebody else's place. Okay, clear? In your home, let's say you have all sorts of unsafe things. Roller skates on the steps, open manholes in your kitchen, what else? Like, what else could you have? Wild animals roaming your den. Okay. Okay. And a burglar comes. He's trying to go, he falls down the stairs because of the skates right into the manhole. He climbs out and then the wolf gets him. Okay, does he have a claim against you? Okay, next one. It's not your home. It's a public place. And you dug a hole, big hole, and you didn't cover it. You thought it'd be interesting. Maybe later you'll like put in water and some fish or whatever. And somebody fell in. Are you accountable? Yes. What about if you didn't dig the hole, somebody else dug the hole, but you took off the cover because you wanted to fix the pipes, which is the reason why they dug the hole. You're a plumber. And later you forgot to recover it. Are you accountable? Yes. What if somebody falls into it, or even an animal, and they're not killed, but there's some injury? What do you think? Yeah, you still pay. Okay, what if the owner of the animal was negligent by letting their animal loose in public property? Basically, you're still going to pay. Okay, clear? Okay, next. Okay, have you? So I'm giving you the example of a hole, but this would appear, anything that causes a hazard to public safety, you're accountable for all of the damage that comes if you were the one who either caused it directly, or you took off something that was precautionary, and because of that, somebody fell in, either literally or figuratively. Okay, clear? So a thing, it used to be cool when I was a teenager, okay, many moons ago. It was cool for teenagers to play around with the street signs, like change the speed limit, turn around the arrows, take away stop signs. This was cool to do. If you cause accidents through this, you're a bad guy, okay? It doesn't matter that you're a teenager, okay, clear? Okay, it was fun though, okay, whatever, okay. Lucky, you almost got it, okay, just like no. Okay, next, okay, somebody else's property. Anything that happens to you on somebody else's property, if you had no authority to be there, it's your problem. If you did have authority to be there, somebody invited you to their home, okay, and there are roller skates on the steps, or the manhole, or the wild animal, okay, and they invited you in, they said, please come for dinner, and then the wolf pounced on you, okay, whatever, okay. So basically they are accountable. There are going to be exceptions to that, but basically they're going to be accountable. Okay, clear? Okay, next thing. Next thing would be, I'm trying to think, we have so little time and so many laws here. Okay, damage that's done through your body. So as we said earlier, basically, even if you don't have intent, if your body is what did it, you're accountable. Next, damage that's done through something you own, like your car, like your bicycle, like your ox, like your sheep. So we're going to take the law concerning an ox, and we're going to then apply it to other things. You have an ox, okay? It's, as far as you know, tame as oxen are. As long as you keep it properly, as long as you guard it, it's not going to do any harm. Then it does some harm. But it had no record of doing harm previously, and you were guarding it properly. Okay, what do you have to pay? Half of the damage, that's all. If it does harm 3 times, then it's as though you did it with your body. You may even die. You understand this? Because you're not taking care of what you know now to be a hazard. This is clear? And the ox would also be killed. Why would the ox be killed if you weren't guarding it properly? The ox didn't do anything wrong. An ox is an ox. So the reason is that it's considered to be a disgrace for a human being to be lying dead while the perpetrator, an animal, is like roaming freely. A human life is more precious than that. Okay, that makes sense to you? Okay, now we get to what you said a moment ago, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, and all of that. It'll say this concerning damages that humans do each other, not death but damages. So none of this is literal. So what is it then? Okay, so an eye for an eye means if your ability to be sold as a slave, remember there was slavery then, with one eye goes down dramatically, that, besides all of the other 5 kinds of damages that I mentioned previously, is a sum you would have to pay your victim. Okay, you got it? Let's say a slave cost $1,000. You get someone to work for you for 6 years for $1,000. That's not bad. Okay? But a slave with one eye is much cheaper. They can't, they can't see distance, they can't drive, whatever. So let's say a slave worth, with one eye is only worth $700. So besides any other damages you have to pay, you have to additionally pay them $300. Okay, clear? Now suppose, this is something else, the person whose eye you took out in a quarrel or through negligence or whatever already lost one eye. So now you've blinded them. So that would mean if they were a slave, their worth would be almost 0, right? So you would have to pay them much more compensation besides the 5 kinds we spoke about already. Okay, clear? That's what this means. It's financial. and it has to do with the diminishment of a person's financial value. The same thing would hold true for a tooth. There's a big difference between a regular tooth and a baby tooth. Okay, clear? Okay, the same thing would hold even for pain. Like, so when the court is trying to figure out how much to compensate someone for pain, how much is pain worth? So there are people who will do things that are painful, like acrobats, stuntmen, right? You'd have to find out how much somebody would take in compensation for suffering this level of pain. But none of this is literal. Do you know that in the Quran they take it literally? Did you know that? They just had this case, I'm trying to remember where it was in Iran. Was it Iran? It was in Iran, where there was a woman who only had sight in one eye. No, it was a man. A man only had sight in one eye. And he had thrown acid at someone, and that person lost the sight of one eye. So they actually blinded him in the court. Okay, this is
where?
in Iran. Yeah. Okay, so that's quite serious. But okay, Tov. Next. So with damages, you're liable for damage, even if when there's no death, you have to pay damage, and they'll have to be proportionate to the changes you made in that person or their property. Okay, an interesting exemption is damage that your kids do. You're basically accountable most of the time for damages that your animals do, because animals are predictable. Kids are totally unpredictable, so even if you're watching them, you can't really know what they're going to do next. So because of this, if your kids do damage, it's nice if you pay, but you don't have to. So actually, my brother-in-law had this case. He has a rather short fuse. Do you know what I mean? Like there's some people who are very patient, but he's not. Okay. And he has like a beautiful home, like he has like a large garden, and he has glass French doors that lead out to the garden. Okay. So his house is adjacent to like a development. So the kids from the development would like to run through the garden, open the French door, run around his living room, and run out. Okay, clear? And he's not the type. Got the picture? There's some people say, hey, look at that, they're so funny. Okay, he's like, who are they? That sort of thing. Okay, so one kid bought a bicycle. So you would bicycle through the garden, open the doors, go through the living room, and zoom out. So could you imagine how angry that made him? You could picture this? So he got a hold of the kid a few times, yelled at him, called the parents, nothing helped. So finally he lost it. He got a hold of the kid and he hit him. And the kid, who was, I don't remember now, 10 or 12, took him to the halachic court. Okay, got it? And he had to pay. Could you imagine this?
Who did he have to pay, the kid?
The kid. Okay, the judges said, do you deny having hit him? He said, I didn't deny it, but look, he was in my property. He said, but, you hit him, didn't you? He had to pay him. So, but the only thing you could have with kids and the damage they do is now that it's known that he runs through homes and trespasses, the parents could be warned they have to watch against their child's trespassing, and next time you could sue the parents. Okay, clear? Once it's something specific, you could sue the parents, but kids are extremely unpredictable. We never found out, when my oldest daughter was 4, we never found out how she did this. She wasn't that verbal, like most 4-year-olds are, but she wasn't. She somehow learned how to open gas tanks. So whether she did this, I think she did this with playing cards, because I saw cut up playing cards later. But she learned how to open it up she learned how to open gas tanks. We lived in a development where you have houses around a courtyard, and there was a parking area. So one day she opened several gas tanks and then fed the cars. Okay, so I gave them lunch. Okay, what do you think she fed the cars before? Water and sand and plants and that's what she fed them, okay? And that I put them back to sleep, which meant she put the gas tanks back on. But she did terrible damage and I didn't have to pay, which was wonderful for me, but not so good for the other people. Okay, clear? But nobody ever figured it out. We couldn't pull it out of her how she got them open. But, so this is how kids are. Next kind of damage, which will be last for today. Okay, so the last kind of damages for today, the last thing that you have in civil law will be, okay, if you humiliate someone publicly, it's considered a damage. So the question would be is how much do you have to pay them, and what's considered public? So public is there's discussion, it's either in the presence of 3 people or more or 10 people or more. Okay, there's some discussion there. And the amount you pay has to do with the status of the person who you humiliated and who was present. Okay, so the higher the person's status is, then the more money you would have to pay. So if you call, let's say, a 12 or 13-year-old idiot, that's much less than if you would call Trump idiot. Okay, clear? Okay, so this is the law concerning shame, which tells you that emotional damage is considered damage in Jewish law, which is not the case in all other systems. Okay, emotional damage is real damage, yeah?
So would you have to pay for therapy if you were?
No, the court will give a price to what the person would have paid not to have endured that experience.
Well, what if somebody bullies a kid or takes advantage of them?
So first of all, if they're a minor, we have to talk about things involving children and damages to them. It's a separate frame. But basically, they would have to pay what the court assigns of what one would pay to avoid the damage, which is very, very subjective, and the court would have to look into it very carefully. Okay, clear? Zehu.